Live from Johannesburg, this is Tonight with Jane Dutton. With 30,000 public sector jobs on the line, can the ANC still turn the economy around? 1 in 5 South African adults are high. Why are we losing the war against drugs? In a tit-for-tat, the ZANU-PF has filed its response to MDC alliances calling the election a sham. And the colour purple was such a hit, it's back in South Africa for a second time. We speak to the lead actors. That's Tonight with Jane Dutton. How will the ANC-led government ensure our economy is stable, and when will Cyril Ramaphosa get that closure on Marikana? You can phone in with your questions for the ANC's head of presidency, Zizi Kodwa. And then later, 20% of South Africa's adults are addicts. Is our approach to addiction outdated? That's my question for my panel. What's yours? You can tweet us on hashtag Tonight with Jane Dutton. You can also phone in on 011 759 6340. But first, here's Vuyo with the news. Vuyo.
Thanks, Jane. These are our top stories at this hour. New research into the Marikana Massacre claims to show police intentionally shot and killed 34 protesting mine workers in 2012. The report by the Institute for Security Studies, called Sound of Gunfire, is based on photographs and witness statements. Tomorrow will be 6 years to the day since the incident. The workers had been on a wage strike.
What the SAPS members did in response to this gunfire was that they fired into the Scene 2 area. So they weren't firing back at the police on the far side of the kopje. In response to the fire that was coming in their direction, they were firing with the intention of shooting at the strikers.
Lonmin Mine is holding a ceremony in honor of those killed in the Marikana Massacre. And miners are gathering for a night vigil. We'll take you live there at 9 o'clock. And Public Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordhan says a cleanup is indeed taking place in state-owned entities. 10 Eskom executives implicated in state capture have left, and 11 criminal cases have been opened. These involve 9 senior executives. 239 cases of whistleblowing are under consideration. This while lifestyle audits of management are also underway.
Resignations in some of the entities. For example, the Denel CEO resigned, as did the Transnet CFO. The Denel CFO is currently undergoing a disciplinary process as well, and similar things will begin to happen elsewhere in these entities as we go forward. But essentially in this 5-month period, the basic theme would be dealing with the past, surviving the present, and creating the basis for sustainability into the future.
Rescue operations in Genoa, Italy are continuing. At least 39 people were killed there in a bridge collapse on Tuesday. Officials are still sifting through the rubble looking for people. They say this could take several days. A state of emergency has now been declared. The area has recently been awash with torrential rains, but local media reports say the cause of the collapse may be structural.
Mechanical operations need to be done before we can reach the people buried under. We can't say for sure how long the rescue will go. The complicated situation requires us to plan step by step. We have now prepared ourselves for several days of continuous work.
Well, just after 9, Jane speaks to a reporter in Italy on the impact of that collapse. For now, it's over to you, Jane.
I will be. Thank you for that, Vuyo. Now, police were not provoked when they shot at Marikana miners at Scene 2. That's what a new report by the Institute of Security Studies says. Tonight, the ANC says it's committed to ensuring another Marikana massacre never happens again. But is this clear, or does it have to do much more to convince the public? We speak now to ANC NEC member and head of the party's presidency, Zizi Kodwa. Very good to have you with us.
Good evening, Jane. Nice to see you.
This report, I mean, shocking findings that police went ahead and shot at people when they were down or running away. What is the ANC response to that? Even more damning evidence.
What is important, if you read our statement earlier today, is that we need urgently, our government must implement the recommendations as directed by the Falam Commission. What are those recommendations? Those recommendations speak to a number of areas broadly. Firstly, we must demilitarize police. We must restrain police in order to be able to recapacitate them to deal with crowd control in terms of public order. And it's important to do all these things, including, not limited to, compensation to victims. We should not close, but I think it will heal, because it will not bring back the families of 44 people who died in Marikana. Unless for us, we do all of that, the package of that, it is important that we commit ourselves in the spirit of the values enshrined in the Constitution of the Republic, of the society we seek to build, that the tragedy that happened, unless we do all of that, we will need to do what is directed to us by the recommendations of Falam Commission.
But in the meantime, I mean, what about dealing with those, the perpetrators, those directly involved? I mean, we haven't seen enough action there, have we? Something needs to be done urgently.
We have. A number of police officers have appeared. A number of police officers have been charged. You will recall there was a commission headed by Judge Falam. And therefore that commission, there's a number of recommendations, and there are certain people that were exonerated, who were implicated, were alleged.
But people are saying it's not enough, that more were involved, that more heads need to fall.
Absolutely, but if we were to do that in the context of our constitutional democracy, those things need to be investigated. If there's any evidence of anybody, regardless of her position, of his position in society, or in government, or in the state, that person, the law must take its course. We have said that, precisely the reason why the commission was in open space. And therefore, if there is new evidence in the context of the work that has been done already by the Falam Commission, let the law enforcement agencies and government, if there's a process in which, remember the recommendations also further of the Falam Commission, anticipated that there could be more work that needs to be done, whether the police need to reconstruct the crime scene. This is some of the further work that needs to be done. To an extent that work has been done, I think government, through its different law enforcement institutions or government portfolios, can explain further that work.
I mean, it's a sad indictment of our society and how some of the police operate, you know, that they feel that they can kill South Africans, that they can rob from South Africans and cash and transit heists. So you feel that a bigger overhaul needs to be done?
Absolutely. I mean, if you read the recommendations of the Falam Commission, not only does it talk about the criminal elements you're talking about within the police, which are something different and they must be dealt with, because it's not about police, but it's criminality, like all people who must be dealt with. And it's important that what the Commission says, it talks about the mindset of the institution called the police in the past, where we come from. And therefore they need to transform. That's why it uses the word demilitarized police. There's a particular history where we come from. Unless we do those things, we recapacitate, we retrain police so that they are able to deal with incidences that happened in 2012.
Okay, let's go back to Marikana. When is the president going to go? He told us that he would on this show. When's he planning to go to Marikana?
I can assure you that there are a number of engagements that are taking place between the victims in Marikana, the bereaved families, the trade unions, and the Office of the President, as well as government at different levels, including the implementation of the recommendations of the Falam Commission. And the President's going is that his view, he's still committed to go to Marikana, but of course there are a number of issues that must be done before the President goes, because it's not about just going and say, I'm here as President, as Cyril Ramaphosa. There are certain things that he himself, as a President of the Republic, he has to do, make sure that the government that he leads, those things are implemented. Unless those issues are done, the President is still committed to make sure that he visits the families. That, I must say, that visit, it will go a long way to heal, although it will not bring back the 44 people that were killed in Marikana, because the President's view is that it will heal the wound of the people that were lost in 2014.
Okay, let's just go back, you know, to this day where 34 miners were killed, and President Ramaphosa promised to visit the area in an interview with me on the 15th of July. Let's just remind ourselves of what he said.
As I have said before, I know that people want closure. I also want closure. And it's a matter that I know that needs to be addressed. And there are other processes that need to be followed through and finalized with regard to the various lawsuits that have been launched. So all that is still a process of finalization. And I've thought that it will be best that we clean all that up so that when finally one goes, and there are quite a number of people who want to go there as well, when we finally go, we should have a situation where we are able to effectively put closure to this matter.
It sounds as though he's making excuses. People want to see the president there. It's been made pretty clear. And isn't it a statement that needs to be made to go to Marikana, look at those people in their eyes?
Unless we don't appreciate the pain of the families, of the bereaved families in particular. The pain of the bereaved families, it is now captured in the recommendations of the Falam Commission. That in order to make sure that, among others, we deal, as we commemorate on the occasion of the commemoration of Marikana, we must heal, we must seek to close the wound of the 44 people and the families who lost their loved ones. In doing so, there are certain things that need to be done. We're directed by the Commission. And the President going there mustn't be a grandstanding, a populist, a publicist exercise.
No, but he wouldn't be doing that. He'd be doing that for the people of Marikana. One would hope to say, I see and hear your pain, and we are doing whatever we can.
It's better to go there having done something than to still go and say we will do something. Because we've already been directed by the Commission to do certain things. And there are processes in government to implement the recommendations of the Falam Commission. Okay. And the President is committed to make sure that he goes. There's no question about him going. But there are certain things that need to be done for him to go there, particularly to meet with the families of the bereaved.
Some people say that this should be declared a public holiday. I know that the ANC, the government is against this. Is it because the ANC, in some people's minds, is involved because of Jacob Zuma's handling? I mean, is that a problem for the ANC? Do you think it'll just resuscitate negative impressions of the ANC rather than the tragedy in Marikana?
I think whatever we do, whatever we say, particularly as political leaders, we must not grandstand around the issue and use this tragedy to grandstand, to make it as a political football tool. If there is any genuine conversation to suggest that there must be a serious commemoration in a form of a public holiday, let that be raised. And I think as a country that has always believed in dialogue and conversation, everybody that is raised in a manner that making sure that we bring us together, it brings a united South Africa.
Judge Shorby today said it should be a public holiday. It calls growing voices.
We use it to build a cohesive society, a peaceful and united South Africa. We must use the commemoration, the occasion of commemoration, to heal the wounds.
And if people said they want it?
This is what I'm saying. It must be raised, not to grandstand.
But if they said they wanted it, would you go ahead and...
The African National Congress, obviously, through its government, if the issue is raised to an extent that people want to commemorate Marikana, there are many instances that have happened in the past. And therefore, there are many other things that you consider to arrive at that decision. All that I'm saying is that, in principle, if the issue is raised, not to grandstand, but is raised objectively to build peaceful, united, cohesive society, that discussion can be entertained.
Okay. NPA is involved in the Marikana issue. Do you think that the NPA will be able to function effectively, considering the changes that we've seen at the top?
I think what had happened already, if you read our statement again, in relation to the Concord judgment and the ruling and the subsequent appointment of the acting NTPP, for us is an issue of stability. We're concerned about stability. And I think the institution, therefore, the decisiveness that at which the president moved promptly to appoint the acting NTPP, it does allow and bring back public confidence to the institution. The NPA will continue to do its work without fear, without favor.
Jacob Zuma, the Concord judgment blamed Jacob Zuma for a lot of what happened. As an ANC member, will he be disciplined?
We don't want to go back to that to that period, but I think for us, our greatest...
Will he be disciplined? I mean, if this is what he's been accused of doing, shouldn't he be taken in? Shouldn't there be a conversation? that needs to be had?
The conversation we need to do as the African National Congress we must have. How do we strengthen public institutions, including institutions such as the NTPP, to make sure we breed integrity and credibility. We win people's trust. We win confidence of the people to these institutions. Because what has happened over a period of time, because of one action or another, it has eroded people's confidence in these institutions. If we are to undermine the institutions that support our democracy, we'll have a problem. And therefore, our conversation we have at the moment, to an extent that we welcome the impromptu action by the president, it brings back the confidence of the people to the institutions. Whether there are subsequent issues that need to be done internally in the organization, that is a matter that the ANC will consider.
We've got somebody on the line, Ashley from Sandton. Go ahead, Ashley.
Yes, hi. Mr. Kodwa, I can't believe actually that you think the citizens of South Africa actually have any faith in the ANC anymore. Firstly, nothing has happened.
I promise you we weren't editing that. I think let's pick up on the faith issue there and dealing with Jacob Zuma, dealing with many people we've seen who have mishandled businesses, have been linked to corruption. And I think people are frustrated that they've seen very little action taken by the ANC. Surely that must be expedited.
There's nothing wrong for a South African citizen to express his or her feeling about the African National Congress. But sometimes to exaggerate that you can't believe that all South Africans have no faith in the ANC. People have faith in the African National Congress. Over a period of time, people have criticized the ANC like the caller has done. Some of them, they do so out of love of the African National Congress, not out of hatred. That's why we say, having learned the lessons of the period of the past 10 years, including, among others, the erosion of the revolutionary values of the African National Congress, hard work, honesty, trust, selflessness, and the erosion of these values have meant that the African National Congress have had to suffer setbacks, for example, in 2016. We are beginning to correct that. And since our 54th National Conference, we are beginning to see a return of the African National Congress that Faith probably will talk about.
Ashley's back. Carry on, Ashley.
Yes, hi. Sorry, I was cut off. Honestly, surely the ANC can't believe that the South African citizens actually still believe in them. They've done nothing to assist the widows from Marikana 6 years ago. And secondly, which is dreadful, is the pit toilets where we've lost 2 children, 2 baby kids. We are now told that the ANC can only provide these 4,000 schools with safe toilets by 2030. They are too busy pilfering and stealing on BE deals and tenders. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley.
I think it's important not to distort. It's important always to be factual, even if you disagree with the government or the ANC-led government. Firstly, the 4,000 is a deadline. The 4,000 schools is a deadline. It does not say only in 2030. It says by 2030 we should have covered. Already there's a lot of work that is being done in response to issues of mud schools in the Eastern Cape, in mud schools in Limpopo, in elements of mud school in Northwest, for example. There's a work being done, and the president was responding to that.
2030 is not quick enough. It's not soon enough.
It's not soon enough, but a lot of work. We are dealing with the legacy. That's why you look at schools in the Eastern Cape, for example. You're not dealing with less than 10 schools. You're not talking about 5 schools in the Eastern Cape. It's because of our history. These were Bantustans. Majority of those schools were built by communities. And therefore, we need to respond to that. Whether if we were to compare that and balance with a number of other needs in the country, to what an extent are we able to take every resource to education, to basic higher education infrastructure to build school? These are difficult balance act that a decision, but at least a decision has been taken.
Okay, sorry, carry on. A decision has been taken.
A decision has been taken to correct that situation, to make sure that at least by 2030, 4,000 schools, at least in terms of toilet latrine, that they'll be dealt with.
Talk about balancing. Let's go back to the NPA. The DA is very against Parliament not getting involved in the choice. As far as checks and balances are concerned, shouldn't Parliament get more involved in choosing ahead? I mean, obviously, we've seen what Jacob Zuma did with Sean Abrahams. We don't want to see a repeat.
In terms of the separation of power doctrine, and sometimes it escapes those who are populist and who grandstand. It's important to always understand we've got an executive, we're a constitutional democracy, which, among others, give powers to the President of the Republic, give powers to the executive, give powers to Parliament. And those powers can't just be changed because of one incident. If there is any need for that to be reviewed, there is a process in the country. If there are legislatures, for example, who want to review that, there's something called Parliament, where legislatures have an opportunity to say, let's review and amend our constitution. But the architects of our constitution, those who build the architecture of our constitution, it's just that it creates deliberately this separation of power doctrine, deliberately, so that you create checks and balances.
Okay, all right. They haven't really been working up until now, so obviously we all hope that that's going to be amended and soon. Let's talk about another statement
It can only be done by those who are making noise about it without making public statement, but they know exactly what needs to be done. If there is any work or law that is not working, there is a process.
That's good to hear. We're running out of time. That's why I'm rushing to this next one, because I really want to ask you about this. You made a statement earlier on about 50,000 mine jobs that we've seen being lost. We know that something like 30,000 jobs could possibly go within the SOEs. How will the ANC work with COSATU in balancing keeping the SOEs afloat and keeping the COSATU members happy and in jobs?
The ANC is emphatically against retrenchments, both in the public sector and the private sector. The issues of how do we build an effective, capable developmental state are issues that are on the agenda of the Alliance Political Council. In the last Alliance Political Councils, those issues were ventilated, including the issues about the sluggish growth of our economy, how do we make sure that the unemployment among young people, including the strengthening of the alliance. Those issues are now in the agenda of the next meeting of the Alliance Political Council, which will come soon. That's why we did not respond in detail to the COSATU statement, because that is not how we deal with our alliance partner and ventilate issues in public.
Because COSATU threatened that if their jobs weren't kept, that the ANC could possibly lose those voters at the polls.
There was not even a need for the statement,
that's quite a threat,
because the ANC is emphatically against any retrenchment. So it's not like the ANC somewhere changed the decision that it has taken for many previous conferences that the ANC will not retrench. But however, there is a discussion. We're aware, for example, in the public sector, there's a discussion between union and government on the very same topic of capable developmental state.
Okay. Zizi Kodwa, thank you very much. It was great talking
to you.
Thank you. Still ahead, are we getting it wrong when it comes to treating substance abuse? The South African Society of Psychiatrists seems to think so. That's up next.